So live from Pahrump, pre-recorded from Pahrump because this one's going to be at a different time. This is Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. This is the episode, Chris Real episode, by the way. We're going to talk about everything you wanted to know about motorcycles, emissions, testing, sound, fuels, all kinds of stuff like that. So welcome. This is our second hour live because I only have Chris for a little bit of time. And we're going to actually try to take a call, I believe, which will be the first one. And if it gets to feedback, I'm just hanging up at everybody, and then we're going to go practice some more. Because we practiced like in the closet earlier, and it seemed like it worked, but we weren't live. So I'm not really sure what happened. That wasn't your thing making noise, was it?
Probably.
Oh, is your
I'm muted right now.
You're muted. Okay, everybody's muted. It was like getting pretty crazy inside my headphones. So again, pushing the boundaries of stuff that's pretty easy to do for ordinary people, but not for a motorcycle racer like Jimmy Lewis. Washed up, by the way. So I'm here with Chris Real, who runs DPS Technical.
Correct.
He's a friend of mine. He is a fan of the show, and also he's an expert. And when I say expert, unlike me, I'm an expert at certain things, but I'm not an expert in oil or the regulations that motorcycles the hoops that they have to jump through to be legal by whether it's from the EPA or from CARB or from the Euro standards. This is all stuff that you understand and you're an expert at.
I try to be, and I think so. And I get paid to be. So, I don't know where we really need to start, but I'll start with a question.
Okay, I can answer 9 out of 10 questions without referring to a reference manual, but I guarantee you're going to go out of my realm.
Well, this one's a pretty straightforward question. Which end of the motorcycle do you want the number plate on? If you want the number plate on the front, you get a race bike, and it has minimal requirements from safety and emissions. And if you want a motorcycle with a number plate on the back, then the challenges regulatory-wise become significant. So
that's
where do you want to start?
That's brilliant. Well, since the majority of we're going to have to break this down into two. We could have a third segment, but not tonight. You're going to have to come back for the third segment.
Okay.
But man, interestingly enough, in the future, if you could your crystal ball in the United States specifically, it's going to get more difficult to have a number plate on the front, correct?
An unrestricted number plate on the front. So we have closed course competition use motorcycles, right? Race bikes?
Race bikes.
And then
in California talk, that's people say red sticker, or you just call it, that's a motocross bike. It's a bike you can't get a green sticker for.
True. And then what is a green sticker? A green sticker is an EPA or CARB compliant recreational off-highway motorcycle or vehicle. If you happen to have two wheels, it's a motorcycle. If you have four, it's not a motorcycle.
And if you have three-wheel, it's a good feeling.
Oh, you bet.
I like to say that. But so when we start talking about like the compliant stuff for the recreational vehicles and stuff, there's sound requirements.
Yes.
And there's also emissions requirements.
And that's both evaporative emissions, what permeates and comes out of the gas tank and unburned, and there's tailpipe emissions, which comes out of the back end of the motorcycle.
Right. And okay, so that's the difference. The motocross bikes, the quote red sticker bikes or the competition bikes are not regulated currently.
Correct.
And the other ones are. Okay. So I've heard that there's changes going on. It's stuff's been signed into law potentially, or there's changes that are down the pipe that could make it very difficult to obtain a motocross bike in the future.
True. There may be some requirements because a motocross bike or a closed course competition bike is really intended just for that purpose. So and this isn't really new. It's kind of been what the law was meant to
corral, if for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Yeah, you ever heard of the Clean Air Act?
Yeah.
Okay. The little agency, the easy to get along with, EPA.
Didn't Ronald Reagan bring that into California?
Well, it's been federalized, for a long time. So California is California, but we do need to understand that there are federal regulations, and then California has those regulations and another scoop of hurdles.
Yeah. So so right now you can buy your motocross bike and go to your motocross track, and everything's all good. And a lot of races are held on closed courses, so you can take your closed course bike and race it there like you're supposed to. But we always keep hearing the rumblings, like in California specifically, of, well, you're not going to be able to race your closed course bike or ride your, you've never been able to really ride your, they had red sticker season, when air quality was better, and you could ride a red sticker bike in a green sticker application. You could ride it off road.
You could recreationally practice your race bike off the racetrack.
Off road. So it gets pretty sticky, and even for me, it's kind of difficult to understand. Luckily, I tend to ride, off road. I tend to ride bikes that are street legal, that are they meet on road certification, so they're legal off road. So they're green sticker bikes, and they're good to go there. I rarely try to ride a motocross bike off road in California specifically. Out in Nevada, it's a little bit different. We're wild west out here. We can kind of do that sort of stuff. We can ride our competition bikes all year long. We don't have to have a special sticker for it. So there's a lot of different regulations between, state to state. But what I think people a lot of times, if you're in a place like this, you just say, I don't care how they do it in California. Well, that kind of stuff seems to spread, and it has to a certain extent.
Well, it is federal law.
Yeah. And so in other states, you can get, if you have an off-road sticker, can you ride your motocross bike on the Forest Service trails?
In some states, and it varies state by state, but it becomes a regionally enforced regulation, and so it depends upon the area, and what the level of enforcement is, and that a lot of that is based upon population density and the environmental concern. Some states have a whole lot of population, and some states don't. And so they kind of look at the impact a little differently. So
if you modify your motocross bike to meet the sound requirement and have the stipulations of, let's say, a spark arrestor, and that's usually for the most part, if you were 96 decibels in a stationary test and had a spark arrestor, generally you were legal to ride on most Forest Service trails.
Correct.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you get in different areas that have different regulations, and unfortunately, what I saw happen in my lifetime was, before that, all you had to do is have a spark arrestor, and spark arrestor just most of the time meant you were quiet enough to be okay. Before the sound really hit, the rebirth of four strokes kind of changed.
Yeah, it did. That was kind of a game changer.
Yeah, and you could speak to the different sound waves between two strokes and four strokes for hours upon end. Yes.
True.
Yes. So in my time frame, it was put a spark arrestor on it, and you can ride anywhere you want. And now we're getting to the point where it's like it has to have a license plate on it to ride anywhere you want.
And the license plate, a lot of things have changed with how public lands, federally managed lands are managed, and so. As we take a look at, the wild west of days gone by, we used to make our own trails and go kind of where we wanted to go. Well, as, motorcycling got a little bit more popular, the overall impact started becoming something to consider. So, federally, everybody started taking a look at erosion and noise and stuff. And so, they started managing the lands slightly differently. Sometimes it's managed because of political concerns, and sometimes it's scientific or environmental concerns. So we things things have changed, and also the vehicles have changed. So
the old 2-stroke to the current 4-stroke was
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, when I was a kid, was less sound, more ground. That was, and that was when people did not run mufflers. I mean, it was literally straight pipes on your 2-stroke.
A Stinger.
Yeah, you had a Stinger on your bike, and the muffler reduced horsepower, so nobody was going to put that on. The bikes were horribly inefficient and everything at the time. But regulations change, and then manufacturers are forced to, because legally they have to jump through the hoops to produce the bikes that we want or expect. And on my side, I get asked all the time, why does Honda or KTM or Yamaha, why do they do what they do? Because if you look at each individual brand, they kind of interpret the rules, whether it's on-road, or dual sport in our world, or a green sticker or off-road, or just an off-road compliant, EPA compliant off-road bike. Why are they all so different? How do they, some have throttle stops, some don't. Some use, different tricky ignition mapping stuff that makes it pass the test, but it's not really that good for off-road riding. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The manufacturers, as we take a platform, a racing platform or a street platform, and we try to blend it down into to what fits the portion of the market that they're focusing on. Adjustments, compromises, designs need to be adapted to fit the target audience, and so a race bike, used to be something was pretty fun to ride, recreationally or trail wise. Well, now a race bike, my race bike is a terrible trail bike.
Yeah,
it's
well, the race bikes have become more race bikes.
Yeah,
and then in reality, where they went, a lot of the manufacturers, they started building specific trail bikes, and the problem is everybody still thinks they need a race bike. You want to, I always jokingly say, if you could drive a top fuel dragster on your commute that involved 20 stops lights to go to work, you would do it. That's the American way, and so everybody feels like they want a race bike. So now it's funny where a lot of the manufacturers take a race bike and then modify it down or unmodify it, or you'd like to say detune it, but actually they modify it quite a bit.
It's a different motorcycle.
Yeah, it ends up becoming a different motorcycle because it can't be loud, and it can't spit out emissions.
It has to be durable. It has, when you have an emission compliant vehicle, it has a mandated expected duty cycle.
Yep.
And it's an exciting time to be a motorcyclist because we have such wonderful choices. We can have the full-on race bike, or we can have a pretty zoomy recreational off-highway bike, or we can have a pretty dang good on-highway legal dual sport bike, and unless you're a full-blown racer, sometimes your street bike, like I have a 350. It's one of those other brands you're always picking on. If
it's not a KTM, it's one of those ones that are like white and they look like KTMs.
Yeah, but
I know somebody that races for them. Oh, that guy bought me this beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
But I also have I have an EPA compliant off-highway recreational motorcycle.
What color is that one?
It happens to have a red fender.
Yeah.
and it's a little over 10 years old, and I'll tell you right now, my street bike is a better dirt bike than my dirt bike. and my race bike is a race bike, and it is not a very good Trail bike.
What color is that one, Chris?
Well, that's a contract bike. It has a red fender.
Red fender. Okay, got it.
And it's like, well, which is the best motorcycle? It's like, if I'm going to go out and ride the SRA Grand Prix, and I'm so fast I can finish a 1 hour race in 45 minutes because I'm done.
Wait, those races are only 45 minutes long, so you're telling me it takes you an hour to get done with the 45-minute race?
The 1 hour race, I'm back in my truck in 45 minutes.
Right.
But my race bike is really good for a young guy, and my trail bike or my street bike is a really good motorcycle for an older guy, and I go as fast on my street bike as I do on my race bike. Because it's the talent switch only goes this high.
I literally want to do. I mean, I used to like use a lot of stuff about lap times, and I would really like to take a wide range of bikes to a track and have a wide range of riders ride them around and do some lap time testing on different things, because we start talking about like why you choose a race bike versus a compliant bike and different things, and just exactly what you're saying. I mean, the motocross bikes have to be designed so they can be raced at the highest level in a production form. I mean, we know all the stuff that they do to those bikes to make them factory bikes, but there's a lot of stuff they can't change. And that stuff is what makes it difficult for the average guy to ride them to their level. But then when they start tuning the compliant bikes, it has to perform acceptably. And I think when we first really got into the heavy emission stuff, and this would be, I'm just going to kind of guess, in the mid 90s when they really started clamping down on that stuff. Some of those bikes were kind of horrible. They came so corked up you couldn't ride them.
Yeah,
it was almost like the manufacturers just expected you to do something to them.
Well, there was a time when the regulations came forward faster than the technology could adapt, so there were some compromises.
Yep, I remember those, and I think still to some point there's still some of those kind of sort of stopgap, things that some of the manufacturers will do, and it doesn't take long for the general public to figure out. It's like, hey, I can modify it this way, which I think technically, are you breaking the law?
If it's an emission, an emission component, that's a little thing called emission systems tampering.
Okay.
That's kind of frowned upon.
Right.
But if it's used for closed course competition use only, well then,
if you're converting and I always like to say it, if you're converting your bike into a closed course competition bike, you can do whatever you want to it.
Do whatever you want. But in reality, the technology, the electronics, the suspension, the brakes, the chassis dynamics are coming forward, and the manufacturers, all of them, I don't care what color fender it has, they have some pretty doggone good motorcycles for 95% of the market for the intended purpose.
I tend to agree. I mean, I think last week I said that the 2019 Honda CR450X, which is the emissions, the EPA compliant, the California Green Sticker legal bike. If you're just going to buy a 450 off-road bike and leave it stock, especially if you are riding faster stuff, man, that is a really good stock bike.
It's a good motorcycle.
You can easily modify it and make it better, but like really, if for who and for what? If you have a specific need, do you really need that much? Well, the funny thing is my modified bike did not go any miles per hour faster than the completely bone box stock one. And I checked it on GPS, and I checked it with the odometer on the bike, and I checked it in multiple locations. It never went faster when it was modified. It sure accelerated a little bit quicker, and you got, a little bit more throttle response, but, is what, in stock form, you just turn the throttle a little bit farther, and then it, goes the same speed. So, and still got ridiculous fuel mileage and did all the stuff it was supposed to. Plus, it was quiet.
And it's durable.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, the manual says you have to change the piston in like 12 hours.
Perfect.
I don't know. I don't know what the manual says. They never gave me a manual, but on the internet they kind of brought that kind of stuff up. So there is a reason. The manufacturers have to make the bikes like this so that they can be sold. That's the reason. And people kind of don't understand that. They just say, "Oh, well, they're just making them like this." I mean, there's a reason for it, and they intend to make them run well. And if they don't, I'll complain about it. So that's kind of where we're at on that. So next kind of question that I wanted to bring up is about the fuels and some of the challenges we're facing with fuels these days.
Yes, well, fuel is going to continue to evolve. It's actually never stopped evolving from the day gasoline was a waste product. So 100 years or a little bit more down the road, we're here in knocking on the door of 2020, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, we've got the fuel has changed," and the fuel is evolving. It's getting cleaner.
And by cleaner, you mean they're putting additives into it?
Or taking additives out.
Okay, like lead.
Well, lead
coming out.
Lead went away because it was kind of bad for biological units.
Yeah,
it would kill you.
Yeah.
And it was kind of bad for the environment. And the reason why it was there, it was an anti-knock component. And pretty soon we figured out that we could not have some of these negative side effects by changing from lead, and we evolved from lead for a brief moment in time. We had manganese, and then for another little moment in time we had a thing called gasohol, and then we went to reformulated gas, which is code for "we're not telling you," and each one of these steps, we were able to maintain octane, which is resistance to knock. It's not power, and then we the properties changed and the technology changed on the vehicles, and so fuel is going to continue to change. Right now we're into the ethanols. We'll probably stay there for a while.
And what does ethanol do?
It's an oxygenate. It brings in oxygen, and it also works as an octane enhancer, and changes, depending upon the ratio, it changes some of the vapor pressure, how much expansion, and it changes what the heat value, the BTUs, are in the fuel.
Is it good or bad?
It's different. I like clean air, so I'm saying it's good.
Right.
I like race engines and that need to go a long ways on fuel, so I'll say it's bad. So that's.
So you're not getting the same miles per gallon with ethanol.
Well,
or you're talking about durability.
Well, miles per gallon, you have to tune for miles per gallon.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a difference there, and it really depends upon the engine and the tune package. So the short answer to a very complex question is we are going to have to evolve and adapt to the fuel that's available. And if you don't like that, you got choices. You can use specialty gas. You can maybe use an additive. Maybe you can switch to electric, or maybe you can walk. But in reality, fuel is going to evolve, and we're going to have to tune for the fuel that's there. And if you have the ability to change, volumetric quantities going in, the alcohol fuels, basically you need to go a little bit richer. And
so there's tuning that goes along with
there's tuning that goes along with it.
And so one other thing is I'm going to let everybody know that's kind of listening or live, that's watching us live specifically, is that we are able to take call-ins. So we're not going to take the questions on the forum. I might dig in there, but I want to let you know that you can call into this show, and we're going to see if it works. This is something new here. I'm going to give you a phone number right now. So get your pen out real quick. But that way, and I'm just giving Chris a chance to take a little sip of tequila there. Here's your pen, 775-451-3328. You can call into the show. Gabe will screen you and put your question in if it's any good. And we can answer those questions. And I have another question. So what's the bad part of ethanol? And I just want to throw one word out there: water.
Water, and water breeds deposits and some corrosion. It may not be totally compatible with some of the...
Because the ethanol absorbs water quite handily.
Correct. Sort of like a magnet.
Yeah, sort of like a magnet. And there's a lot of moisture in air a lot of times.
True.
And so it's specifically bad when the longer your bike sits, or your motorcycle sits, or your
True.
gas sits, and especially when the container isn't really sealed well.
True.
Yeah. So those are explain some of the side effects of the ethanol.
Well, elastomers, all of your rubber components are potentially at risk. Some of your metals may not be compatible with the with the ethanol, gasoline, water mixture. So you might see green jets.
Yeah, I've seen green.
Or other colors. Your storage life may be compromised, meaning it will go bad.
Yeah, quicker than unethanol gas.
Correct. And so those are some of the considerations or advisories. So if you say, okay, well, I'm going to pinch the vent hose and turn my gas off and drain the carburetor. I'm okay for a period of time. But it's these things that we have to be a little bit aware of, and then figure out some countermeasures, maybe whether it be a mechanical.
How about that stuff right over there? Reach over and grab that stuff.
Oh yeah, good old Chevron Techron Power Sport small engine fuel system.
Have you tried that yet?
Yeah.
I actually have.
Yeah.
I park a lot of motorcycles in my container, my rental bikes that sit over the summer, which at least it's not that humid here, but they sit. And this year, every bike came out and started if it didn't have a dead battery, which is kind of rare. I mean, we usually have a lot of plug jets, and our previous go-to method was to mix, like our last tank of fuel that was going through them. We would actually mix two-stroke oil in there because that seemed to help prevent some of the plugged pilot jets and some of the other stuff.
An oil-containing fuel, you're pretty much putting a rust and corrosion inhibitor on the surface, and the root chemistry on that. I have a long history with what's in that, like a long history,
right?
And for this is a countermeasure. It's over the counter. It's available. It works on every color fender. Has probably no real major negative side effect, other than it costs about the same amount of money as a cup of coffee.
Right. Hey, we actually have a call. Is this working? Caller, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Gabe? Here's we're gonna do how to screen calls lessons live on the show. Gabe, get their name and then you put it on the thing here, and then I would know. But okay, what's your name?
My name is Ray. I live in Arizona.
Ray from Arizona. We might know Ray from Arizona. Ray, guess what? You're our first ever caller on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday.
Well, it said try this number out and see if it works. I thought I'd try it out.
Yeah, it worked. And now you're live on the show. You're here with Chris Rial, who you may know.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Ray.
Actually, they said that we should get you two in here and just you guys could have your own show, and I could just go drink, I could go sit in the corner and drink tequila. So for anybody who's listening, Ray, by the way, longtime motorcycle industry guy, a Score 250 Baja champion.
Yes, in the 80s, back in the olden days,
in the 80s.
Air-cooled twin shocks.
Air-cooled twin shock days. That you mixed your gas and oil, right?
Yes, we mixed our gas and oil.
Good. So you have a question? So you're having a blur?
I do.
Go ahead.
I have a real question, though. Here's a real question. So here in Arizona, we have some stations with the non-ethanol gas.
Right.
But the octane rating's usually like about 89, 88, something like that. And then, the 91 or the 92 octane got the ethanol. So if I'm just out putt dual sporting on my 500 EXC, what would be the better fuel to use?
The lower octane ethanol free.
Oh, really?
That's sort of, yeah.
Well, because it's not ethanol.
Yeah, well, if you're just putt dual sporting, you're probably not on the power real hard, so the octane becomes a not quite as important, and for from a fuel economy standpoint, even though it's very, very small, admittedly, and I'll get flack about that, but I always say prove me wrong with science.
We'll prove you wrong with the internet.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But the slightly losing a little bit of octane and maybe having less storage headaches and maybe a little bit different chemistry in the mid range, the mid distillation point might be to your advantage on your 500cc dual sport.
Even though the manufacturer recommends that you run the 91 octane.
Correct.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of chime in here a little things. When I was racing, especially on the two strokes, I didn't like the high octane gas. I felt like the bike got a little zingy on the bottom, and didn't perform as well. And so I've never been a big fan of like the really high octane stuff. And I know we had some questions a few weeks ago about like the 100 octane low lead, some of the aviation fuels and using some of that different stuff. So
Jimmy, to chime in on what you're talking about, the high octane in the engines.
Yes.
So you might remember in the way olden days, XR400 at the Nevada Rally, we ran on the stock 400s. We ran the race gas that the 6Ms were running.
Yep.
And they were really hard to start in the morning because there wasn't enough bang in that. Or there was too much cooling effect, I think. Or defer to Chris on that one, but there was just too much fuel for the stock engines. They had starting issues.
Yeah, they didn't have the initial boiling point was high, so the gas was not high in what I'll call vapor down low. So it was like trying to start a campfire with all logs. You kind of need some kindling, and that's what the initial boiling point fractions of the gas are. So the race gas, the high octane, high boiling point, low vapor pressure fuels. The trade-off is you had to push the button a long time on that XR400, and it didn't have a button, so you had to kick it.
The button was your foot.
Yeah. So you had to kick it a lot.
Hey, and when I was racing in Baja, the last time we raced in Baja, we started out running race gas, and halfway, or not even halfway, like 3 pit stops in, the bike wasn't running right, and Bruce Ogilvy, was in the plane, got on the horn and said, "Put PMX in it. Put PMX in the bike." And we put PMX in the race bike, and all of a sudden it started running better. And then the word went out to all the other pits. Somebody run to the gas station and get PMX or get it from somebody, because so it definitely makes a difference. And sometimes the really good race gas may not be what your stuff is calling for. And I know a lot of guys that just because they race, they buy race gas, and I'm like, well, did you change the jetting, or and especially now with an ECU, did you change the fueling controlling? And they're like, huh? So, does it run better? Has race gas in it. So
you definitely got to match the fuel to your motor needs.
For absolutely, Ray, that's huge. If you've got a super high compression, high octane requirement, and you put PMEX or low octane in it, you're going to have what I call a peekaboo piston. It's going to have a hole in it. And so you got to use the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, and so back to the original question that Ray had is like, especially if your bike's going to sit for any time, then there's no question that the non-ethanol fuel is pretty much a better option.
Right now, yes.
Yeah, because I have seen that the water absorption. I've seen some tests done with it, and I was testing fuel filters, the ones that you can see over there, and I could put water in there and it holds it, and then you could pour gas through there and it would magically make the water disappear. The ethanol gas would suck the water up, and then it goes in, and it boosts your compression, right?
I wouldn't say it changes the expansion rate, but But the other thing, and when I was working on a motocross race team for a long time, we would see fuel pump life, degradation when a person came from an area where the only choice they had were the ethanol fuels. So from a lubricity standpoint, we started seeing that in fuel filters and fuel system components, whether it be the pump or the filter or the fuel injector having challenges with the fuel. And it's not so much the fuel; it's the deposits that come along with it.
Yeah. So, okay, Ray, congratulations as caller number 1 on Tech Talk. We don't have a feedback loop. I'm glad I didn't know who it was. That was because I would have dropped you right from the beginning. But Ray was Honda's media guy back during when I was Dirt Riders head idiot. So he used to have to be nice to me all the time and pretend and smile. So kind of like what I do all the time to all my callers and guests here. So, hey, thanks for calling in.
We tested the thing, and you can move on to the next caller.
We'll move on to the
later.
Next caller. See ya.
Bye.
Hey, did that work pretty good, Gabe? How did we go? Good. I'm going to bring Gabe on the show. You know what? I can do that. Hold on here. No, he said no. Guess what, Gabe? Hold on. Hey, Gabe, you're live on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday from over there in the corner. How you doing? He didn't hang up, did he? Your phone's muted? Yep. You should unmute your phone. You're good. Okay. So Gabe won't unmute his phone, and I'm gonna I'll return him back to the screening room. So you're almost as bad as Logan. Yeah. He wants to be worse. We built him a little box over there to hide in, so we didn't have to listen to him when he was screening the call. So next time, get the name, which will help me out a little bit. And but I think we did answer his question, which is good. We had a successful first call, Chris. I'd like to thank you for that because it sure wasn't on me. Let's see. And Heather said to give you a break. That's what my wife does, always correcting for me. Let's see. Let's see if we got any questions in the room here. So everybody wants to know what the tequila is. It's the same as round 1 because we haven't had a chance to modify it. It's Loma Azul and Clase Azul. If you're interested, need another one? Oh no, you still.
No, I'm good.
You're good. So let's see. What other topics were we going to hit on the?
Well, just to kind of circle back to the federalization side.
Yep.
The manufacturers. You have to remember that this isn't the only country in the world that the motorcycles go to, and so the manufacturers, are very challenged with having to meet. Have a platform that it might be a U.S. EPA bike or it might be a European bike. It might have to conform to the the global technical regulations, and so the manufacturers, in order to bring products forward, do a lot of testing and a lot of fine tuning on the vehicles, and then they have to get them federalized, and that does take a bit of time and a huge commitment. So to have such a wonderful choice of vehicles, it speaks volumes to the level of commitment that the manufacturers have to us, enthusiasts that just want to, the perfect motorcycle.
Yeah, and I've kind of seen it from both sides. That's why you do have, sometimes there's a European tune, like all the time. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants, I'm going to get my ECU flashed with the Euro map because it's going to be better. And it's like, I don't know about that. Or I'm going to, and I see people doing things like, reclocking or, adjusting throttle position sensors or, doing some, in reality, probably the worst thing I see people do is cutting mufflers and pulling parts out of it and doing nothing else.
Yeah, that's counterproductive almost 100% of the time, and in reality, you can ride it. It sounds different. You put it on the dyno. It runs different and not always a good one. And then you look at potentially the temperature increase or how it reacts without tuning. Typically, that's a counterproductive way to go. And then when you get down to the off-road side, the noise is really huge. And I'm not going to be on the soapbox. It's the number one thing that always comes up when we're dealing with land use or trying to get a track open or to keep a track open. And so, losing tracks, and having upset neighbors, a high percentage of the time, it's a self-inflicted wound, and it's our own fault.
Yeah, I can't agree. I've beat the noise whistle for a long time. Well, it would be probably better to say blow the noise whistle. And Bob, just by the way, I have an offer that if I spin this camera around at you, somebody else will buy the tacos next week. He's positioning himself to get up and run out of the massage chair, which is kind of like an oxymoron. But going back to the sound thing, and it really, we were pretty good at getting the two strokes quiet, kind of at the end of the two strokes are coming back a little bit, but when the four strokes came, it was just real easy to get more power by making them flow more, which meant freer and louder. Especially that was carburetor day, so you just change a few jets,
yep.
Put a loud muffler on, and then bang, you've got power. Whether or not that rider actually used it, because I rarely heard those four strokes at full noise, twisting the throttle. It was like usually at like a quarter throttle. It's like, yeah, I got more power, and I'm like, well, why don't you just leave it stock and turn it to like half throttle? That's my free tip every week is turn the throttle farther. It's free horsepower most of the time. But when they're all these things are designed as a system. From the if you change one thing on the back end, you probably should change something on the front side
and the middle.
Yeah, all the different stuff. It's all designed to run that way. And for someone to think that, I read on the internet I can do this, or someone said here's the cheap way, and we're all guilty of finding the cheapest, easiest way to kind of think we're tricking it, and it's making it louder is not going to do any of us any favors. And if I really don't know anybody that likes the next door neighbor that has a Harley that put the open pipes on it.
I do.
And Bob loves the diesel trucks here in Pahrump because everybody here, it's we like to blow coal. Yeah, everybody here just takes any sort of smog or emissions device or sound device off those things. And I was at the gas station again. They don't ever shut them off either, and it was idling, and I couldn't believe his girlfriend's teeth weren't falling out of her mouth while that truck was sitting there idling, just based on the noise it was making. So I find that and I used to race with earplugs, by the way, because I like to feel the power, not hear what I thought was horsepower. So you've on all of the different OHV parks, and now they're having to build buffer zones into them, and motocross tracks that have been there forever, and then houses move up, and then everybody complains about sound. And it's like we can all complain about it and say, well, it's their fault or this fault, but if everything were quieter, if we didn't hear them, probably wouldn't be an issue.
A big part of the issue would go down, and the challenge that we have is particularly in the West. We have a lot of population, and population's close to a lot of riding areas, and that's problematic. And then the on highway sound is becoming quite an issue nationwide, and enforcement's going to ramp up, and communities will have a say in that. And of course, then the regulatory agencies will have a say in it. So,
and generally, the say from the regulatory and the communities isn't what we want to hear as off-road riders.
Well, absolutely not.
They have more money than us, and
they have a lot more. They got more bullets than you do. Yeah, and they'll keep shooting them until you surrender. And a lot of the parks, the recreation areas, there's so much buffer zone around the parks that's a buffer from what the community will tolerate and what we generate. There's a lot of area that's just unable to be utilized, and a high percentage of that is because of noise.
And it's not the responsible ones. It's the irresponsible ones that just make that. If they didn't hear you, they're probably not going to see you. They
don't even know you're there.
And I mean, and I'm not jumping on, hey, we all need to go electric on all this stuff. But that's a good alternative for some of this stuff. It's probably not ready for prime time just yet. Although I think we're going to see a phase shift here in the near future. I mean, they're starting it with the small bikes, the kids' bikes and stuff have become pretty effective. Electrically, KTM's going to introduce one at Red Bull Straight Rhythm. They're gonna be bringing their little 50cc sized electric bike. We just got an invite for that, so hopefully I can get one of our guys to go check that out. But there's interesting things coming, and the good thing is we've been able to adapt, and now we can have sound responsible exhaust systems, aftermarket performance stuff
for sure.
That's sound responsible. And I still get one email a week about a guy who says, I bought that FMFQ pipe that you talked about, and I put it on my bike and it doesn't run. And 9 times out of 10, I say, did you take the spark arrestor out? And they go, which is the sound dampening device also. And they go, yeah. And I go, well, put it back in. It wasn't designed to run like that. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they might be selling them with them out, not in.
It comes in a bag of accessories.
It comes in the bag of accessories, because sometimes mine come when they're installed. I've had some that have come out, but a lot of times the ones that we get, because it's a brand new bike, it's an early production one. And so I got to tell them they need to start sticking if you're buying the Q, you need to have that thing stuck in there. And not that it needs to be welded in there or anything like that, but at least let them manually take it out so that they're not making the mistake.
When a little war story, I was running an enduro cross team, and we were doing development on a 450 for that platform, and we actually we were able to get around the course easier when we had a restricted, quiet exhaust. It took a lot of the bark out of the bike so we could not have so much wheel spin. We had plenty of power, and so tuning the power and the whole platform. If you take something out that was intended to be in there, sometimes you go the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I think most of the time, it's funny. The other one that I always kind of struggle with right now is the KTM uses that reed valve in the intake tract of their sound compliant bikes.